We are going to begin with the rulebook. I am looking at SAPI version 2. I believe this is 8.6.2. We're going to go to page 13, and there's a section towards the bottom called Magic Staves. And we're just going to work through this and explain what it means. So item number 1 cannot be used to strike. You cannot hit people with it. It is to be used passively or with blocking, between 36 inches to 72 inches long. Number 3, must be padded along their entire length, and each end must meet the requirements of a pommel. This has two things in it. If we go to the previous page, we can look up the definition for padded or courtesy padding. This refers to the portion of the weapon that is designed to limit injuries from incidental contact with part of the weapon and is not intended for striking. These portions of a weapon must have half an inch of foam over the weapon's core. A weapon is required to have courtesy padding over the entire circumference of its strike legal length. We can ignore that part. But what we get from this is that it must have at least half an inch of foam over its core. And then for pommel, this refers to the padded portion of a weapon at the end of the handle, not intended for striking. The end of the pommel must have a 2-inch cross-section perpendicular to the handle and must be padded. So this means the entire length of our staff needs to at least have half an inch of foam, and then the two ends must meet the requirement for a pommel, which being padded. So there needs to be a half-inch depth off the core on each end, and then it needs to be at least a 2-inch cross section. 4, a player wielding a magic staff may not wield any other weapons or shields except for daggers. That's not important for this. 5 and is not important. And then 6, something to keep in mind is that it cannot be easily confused for a reeve staff or for a different category of weapon. Reeve staffs specifically are usually spiral taped, and so we want to avoid spiral taping. I know it is super easy to just spiral tape something when it's tube-like. If you're going to tape it, you need to either keep it a solid color or differentiate it from this spiral pattern. And then you don't want it to be confused for a different category of weapon. So I've seen a lot of people will make the center of it just padded and then use normal sword foam on each side. That makes it look like a double-ended great or a double-ended long. Avoid that. Make it a very consistent foam depth throughout the entire thing. And then the way I differentiate it is I put a gem on the top. It's very obvious that that's not another weapon.
All right, this is an easy way to make a wizard staff that has a gem on the top. I'm going to start here with some 3/4 inch PVC. I just got this from a hardware store. We're going to have to cut this down. The staff that I'm making for a client, they requested that it be 58 inches, so I'm going to cut this to about 56 so we leave a little bit of room for the gem. This is pipe insulation that has a 3/4 inch hole and then 1/2 inch wall. Putting this on and taping it is going to compact it a little bit, and so it'll be a little bit less than legal. So what we do is, this is just craft foam from Walmart. It has adhesive backing on it, and we're just gonna put an extra layer. This also adds durability as well as thickness. For my gem that I'm gonna put at the top, this is just the center of a punch shield cut out. You can also take puzzle mat or any sort of scrap foam that you have and layer it with your contact cement and then cut this shape out. I'm going to take this out to the bandsaw and I'm going to cut it into more of a gem type shape, as well as my PVC I'm going to take and cut. I have my fabric for the gem. The client has requested this kind of shimmery black color. And then for the wood, or for the staff, requested a wood grain, a dark wood grain. For tapes, you're going to want packing tape, any duct tape you have laying around, and then some cloth tape, scissors, measuring tape, and then some sort of writing utensil to mark the length. Last thing you need is to build up the other end of your staff to meet the requirements of a pommel, which is 2 inches, and that 2 inches needs to be at least 1/2 inch thick because padded. So what I do is 2 layers, 1 layer of a harder foam and then 1 layer of a softer foam. The harder foam can be puzzle mat, the softer foam can be camp pad. It just adds a little bit of squish just in case you accidentally hit somebody. So I am going to go ahead and measure this out and mark where I need to cut this. So it'll be 58 inches, or 56 inches rather. You can cut this with any sort of power tool you have, whether it not even be a power tool with just a saw. But if you cut it kind of jagged, make sure that you sand it so it's even. First thing I'm going to do before I go out and cut is take some duct tape. And this is the end that the gem's going to go on. I'm just going to wrap it with duct tape. I'm going to go out in the garage. I'm going to cut my PVC to size. I'm going to cut this into more of a gem shape, and then I'm going to drill a 3/4 inch hole in the bottom of it. The 3/4 inch hole you can just do with a knife, just trace out a shape and then stab a knife in there, hot knife, anything to make the hole. And then when that hole is finished, we are going to contact cement the PVC, stick the PVC on.
I'm going to start over here at my bandsaw. I can't get the perfect angle because the bandsaw is kind of in the way, so I'm going to make a very rough cut at my line, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to hit it again once I've cut it off. So I'm flipping it around, evening out that cut, and if you were to do this by hand, you would need to sand it down to make sure that it's even. Something I forget at this step is to put duct tape on this end. Once you get this cut, you have your PVC core. Next, I come over here with my gem and I'm going to cut it into a very even symmetrical octagon shape that is a little bit oblong. And I want to maintain as flat of a cut as I can where I'm going to stick it on the staff. I'm just evening up the sides here, cutting it into this oblong octagon. And then I turn my bandsaw table so that I can get these bevels, and we're going to bevel the 7 sides of the octagon, leaving alone the side that's going to be going onto the shaft of our staff. And so we're going to be making 14 cuts, 2 on each of the 7 sides. See how I flip it over here? We're going to bevel all the way around. This just gives it a little bit of a nicer gem look with less rough edges. And then with my drill press, I'm going to put a 1/2 inch bit on it just so that the hole is a little bit snug. If I were to do a 3/4 inch hole, the PVC would just be a little bit loose. So always size down so you get a very nice snug fit. And then I'm going to take my gem and drill straight down into it on the side that I didn't bevel, and we're going to try to go as straight as possible so that it sits straight on the PVC core. Be very gentle, make sure that you don't poke through the other side of the gem. And then I'm going to give it a nice test fit before I come over here with the contact cement. This step isn't a deal breaker, you can just tape it like you would in the later steps. I am just giving it a little bit of extra reinforcement just because some of my clients can be a little bit rough on their stabs. So I'm just taking a little bit of contact cement, heating it up with my heat gun, and make sure you're wearing your proper PPE. I'm wearing a respirator with the organics filter. So we're just gonna heat this up and then we're gonna slide the gem onto it and then sit it out in the garage and let it get off gas for a couple hours to a day. DAP is really dangerous to inhale, so make sure you do this outdoors or with a respirator.
I'm going to slide my foam on. It's going to be a little snug. You can tear the seam. Looks like it is going to be a little snug. Then we're going to cut off this extra just with a knife. So that it's flush. And then we're going to take our packing tape and we're going to torque wrap all the way around to close this seam. Start all the way over here at our gem. To torque wrap, you can tell if you're doing right if it makes this god awful noise. And every time you pass the seam, you want to pinch it closed with your hands so that it actually closes. And now, because we've squished this foam that was just barely legal, we squished it down, it is now not legal. So we need to add some bulk to it with our adhesive crack foam. I'm going to start down here so I can do some measuring. Right now, file this down just a little bit. So our core is 3/4 of an inch. So in order for this to be legal, it needs to be 1 3/4 inch. It is about 1 1/2. So we need to add just a little bit of bulk. I'm going to start down here at the end so that I can measure it. I'm just going to peel a little bit, stick it on there, and just slowly wrap around. And it should make it pretty much all the way around. Like that. And we're just going to keep doing that. Bulk it up to 1 3/4. Yes, it is. I'm going to add 2 pieces just because when we torque wrap it again, it's going to condense it again. Now, we're going to have this little strip that we're going to have to go back and fill in later. I will do that all at the very end. Any gap I have at the end, I usually wait till the very end so that I can take the scraps from cutting these to fill it in. So let's measure these. They are about 3/4 of an inch in width. So we're going to cut some strips out of this. A box blade works the best for cutting these, so I'm just going to wing it on my mat and cut some 3/4 inch strips. Definitely cut this smaller. A little too big. didn't really have any extra for this, so I'm just gonna cut some strips. We went this way. So cut 2 strips that size. Fill in that gap. And then just use a little strip to fill it in. Okay, and then we're going to torque wrap it again. Now it should start to look like staff. Now for the cover, if you are not sewing inclined, you can absolutely just take your cloth tape and tape the whole thing. However, rules do say that it can't be mistaken for another weapon, so do be careful. If there's any sort of confusion, you're going to have to go back to the drawing board. The last thing for your packing tape is we're going to take some strips from here over your gem, hold it on, and then we will do a nice cinch around the bottom. So starting on the staff, over, back down. This just provides a little bit of extra security. If you were to take the sword hit directly to the gem, we don't want that shearing off. Okay. And then we're going to do a cinch right at the bottom. To make the cover for this, we are just going to follow the steps to make a sword cover, except we are not going to make a tip of it. We are just going to make a sleeve that's open on both ends. The reason why is because you can't fit the sword cover or the staff cover over this gem, and then we still need to put the end on this. But the end is going to be significantly bigger than the staff, so we need to put the cover on, put the end on, and then the end's going to be its own separate cap. So we're going to take our measuring tape, and we're just going to take a bunch of measurements down this. So this is about 6.5, a little bit more than 6.5, 6 3/4. Take over 6.5. So we are gonna go with, I would say 6 3/4. We want to go with our biggest measurement because we don't want it to be too stuck in places. You can also go back and torque wrap some more if there are places that are a little bit bulkier than others. So 6 3/4, add about 1/4 of an inch for wiggle room, and then add your seam allowance. I work with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, so 3/8 plus 3/8 plus 1/4, extra inch. So we're gonna do a 7 3/4 inch wide panel, and then the length, we're just gonna measure here what we have to cover. We're gonna cut 53 inches. So 53 inches by 7 3/4. It's always better to go a little bit bigger, and then you can take it in later without wasting fabric. You may find that this is a little bit too loose, and I can just go sew it one more time. And then if you're using anything with any sort of pattern, make sure the grain of the fabric is the correct way. We're gonna cut off this salvage edge. It has like a little bit of a label on it. You don't want that on our staff. I did an awful job of keeping that straight. I said 7 3/4. So we're gonna fold this over 17 more inches, if my math's correct. So to about here. If you want to test this, you can lay it over. Make sure it fits with a pinchable amount. So that looks like it should be okay. And then make sure it's long enough. I always say a little bit longer, you can trim it off if you need to. So that looks okay. And then for the gem, sewing stretchy fabric is never really a great idea unless you know how to do it. I just full send on the serger just because it's easier. If you are struggling with any part of this, just cloth tape the gem. I'm going to trace like a rough outline of the gem. We're gonna go big and then we're gonna bring it in smaller. I would say give it about an inch, inch and a half on each side. And then when I get to the other side, I'm going to flip it so that we get kind of a butterfly looking thing. So when I go and sew this, we have two pieces that look like butterfly wings, and it's gonna make a sleeve. This is gonna take a little bit of adjusting. It already looks like I cut entirely too much. But we're gonna sew this inside out, flip it right side out, slide it on there like a sleeve. This is my serger. You can replicate this by doing a zigzag stitch if you're doing stretchy fabric. If you're not doing stretchy fabric, you can just sew it like normal. So I'm just gonna basically trace the outline of this while stretching it a little bit so that we get some release and it's not too tight. And make sure to start with your work inside out so that you can hide those ugly seams on the inside. We got this guy, we're gonna give it a try. Should feel like trying to fit yourself into some skinny jeans. Alright, I'm happy with that fit. Flip it right side out. That's our shiny black fabric. Cool. Make sure to sew this inside out, so whatever color you want on the outside needs to go to the inside while you're making your tube. Remember your seam allowances. I picked 3/8 of an inch. And remember, we're just making a tube. We're gonna test fit it. No, I'm actually pretty happy with that. It's not too much. I can take it off a little bit. There are a couple of spots that I was a little wobbly with my straightness, but that looks okay. So we're gonna take our gem with the gem cover on, and we're just gonna put a little bit of cloth tape around the bottom just to hold it on. And then we're gonna slide our wood cover on. And then I get it so it's about halfway through the tape we just did. And then make sure your fabric is flat. It got kind of rolled up on itself. Cloth tape, we're gonna wrap around here and anchor this to the top. With as much cloth tape as you'd like. Some people like taking the cloth tape all the way down so you have like a very obvious gripping spot. I like just anchoring it. You're gonna cut all this extra fabric. Doesn't have to be the prettiest thing in the world. Roll it up. You've got your tough puck, squishy puck. Tough puck is gonna go touching the PVC, squishy puck is gonna be facing out. So what we're gonna do is similar to what we did with Jim, is I will put tough puck down on the table, soft puck up. Take a strip of tape, hit the puck right in the middle. And we are going to just tape it right on there. And we're gonna hit it in each direction. And then we're gonna do the cinch. So now you've got this chunky base that this cover is not gonna fit over. So we're gonna take some of this color, put a little bit of a base on it. Take a little bit of your scrap fabric, and we are just gonna cut enough to just cover the little bit. So if this is like 2.5 inches, we want maybe a 3-inch circle, maybe a little bit bigger. Make sure all of the slack is out of this cover. We're gonna cloth tape it just a little bit to anchor it. And then we got this guy. Throw it on the top with the shiny side out. And then we're gonna tape around it. Anchor it with your fingers to make sure that it doesn't slip out of the way. You might take a couple of cracks to get it. You have a staff. Has a little safety end on it.